Elizabeth Warren is facing a major backlash after she accused Bernie Sanders of telling her a woman couldn't win the presidency, and Bernie Sanders denied it. It looks as though CNN at the debates were biased against Bernie and still framed it as though it was true, even though Bernie denied it. At the end of the debate, she refused to shake Sanders' hand. And now Bernie Sanders supporters are putting snake emojis in replies to her on Twitter. At the same time that Bernie Sanders and Warren are embroiled in this conflict, Project Veritas has released part 2 of their expose on Bernie Sanders' Iowa campaign staff. We now see this man, Kyle Jurek, praising gulags, saying that conservatives should essentially be put in them. And he says many other things that are so offensive, I literally can't repeat them on my channel because YouTube would actually shadow ban me. Now, the latest update on the Veritas expose is that the Iowa state directors for Bernie Sanders have begun locking down their social media. I would think with only a couple weeks to the Iowa caucus, it would be major news that Bernie's state directors have all locked their accounts. Yet, mum's the word. We hear very little from the mainstream press about this. The big news, apparently, is that Bernie Sanders is sexist and that Bernie Sanders supporters are putting snake emojis into Warren's replies. And I kid you not, many of Warren's defenders are saying the snake is a biblical symbol representing the evil of women. Therefore, it proves Bernie Sanders is sexist. But here's the bigger picture. I'm going to go through these stories, but it seems that both of these things show Bernie and Warren are kind of imploding just before the Iowa caucus. And the current polling aggregate has them neck and neck with Biden and Buttigieg in Iowa, one of the most important votes in the primary season. Whoever takes this is going to set themselves apart. And as we know, many people like to vote based on who they think is going to win. They will vote for the person they think is the winner. So here's what I'm going to do. I first want to talk about what's going on with Project Veritas because we do now have a statement published by one of the Iowa campaign staffers for Bernie Sanders in relation to what's going on, it would seem, with Project Veritas. I want to show you what's going on with Bernie supporters and Warren, and then it appears the consensus, or at least many people are saying, this is the Democrats kind of burning themselves out. Both Bernie and Warren supporters know this scandal is going to hurt both of their campaigns at one of the most crucial times. Now, there's a big conspiracy theory that Nancy Pelosi's impeachment was timed to hurt Bernie Sanders. Well, it's going to hurt Warren, Sanders, and Klobuchar, so we'll address that. But first, I want to show you this from James O'Keefe. Before we get started with that, head over to timcast.com/donate if you would like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address, but of course, the best thing you can do, share this video. The algorithm on YouTube is unkind. They've changed it so that my channel struggles to grow and many others. It's not just moderates or conservatives. It also includes some progressives. YouTube apparently is trying to shut down these kinds of channels. If you like the work that I do, all you got to do is just share this. If you're on Facebook, hit the share button, share the link on Facebook or Twitter or wherever else. It really does help the channel grow. Let's take a look at this tweet from James O'Keefe of Project Veritas. He says, breaking. Iowa Bernie Sanders state directors all locking their accounts. IA political director Oliver Hidwo. I'm not going to read through all these names, but I can show you the image. We have here 9 accounts that have been locked, and this isn't everyone who works for Bernie Sanders. There's a woman named Misty Rebick who appears to have addressed the controversy, saying, the hundreds of thousands of Iowans we've talked to this caucus season don't care about political gossip. They care about making healthcare a human right, taking on climate change, making college affordable, and ending endless wars. That's our focus, Bernie 2020. Now let's win. Now, this isn't directly addressing Veritas. She doesn't say Veritas. She doesn't mention their names. We can see that she's also locked her account as well. But the response from one of the supporters is this. There's no underselling how big a disaster this is. The gulags weren't supposed to be unveiled until the general election. Seriously, though, nobody cares. Keep up the good work. Now, I'm only going to lightly cover this because the bigger scandal is #NeverWarren, which is still trending on Twitter around number 2 or number 3. People are saying they would rather Trump win than Warren win. It's crazy, but some people are actually saying that. But here's what's important. If you saw my video yesterday about the Project Veritas release and why it was so damaging for Bernie Sanders, this is the perfect example. Most Americans would be shocked to hear the things that this man in the Sanders campaign is saying, that people need to be re-educated, that gulags were good, overt calls for violence. I mean, this guy went so, what he said is so shocking, I can't repeat it. Now, Veritas does have the video, so make sure you can go watch that and check that out. But one of the points I made was that Bernie's staff, instead of denouncing it, will dismiss it. And then you're going to see people mock it and say, who cares? Showing that they don't care about this language. They're in a bubble. They have heard this stuff so much, they don't realize how extreme they've gotten. They've been led down this radicalization path so far that when they hear someone literally saying Trump's voters need to be put in re-education camps, they say, so what? So what? Go show a regular American this who doesn't pay attention, and they're going to be shocked and scared. See, one of the big fears about socialism and communism is that they did this to people. And Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez have been trying very hard to say, no, democratic socialism is about people voting for new policies towards socialism. Bernie has tried very hard to make sure this is not the rhetoric of his campaign, which is why they've been placed in a very difficult position. If they address it, denouncing it, they publicize it. If they dismiss or ignore it, it shows that Bernie really doesn't care about his Iowa staff saying these things. And as we can see, although this individual responding is not no one particularly important, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, just another Twitter account, a couple hundred followers, but they don't care. They really don't care that staff members in Bernie's camp are saying this and going on to say that other staff members believe similar things. That should be shocking to many people. But there's a lot more information that has to come out from Project Veritas. So I know a lot of people in the Bernie camp absolutely detest and hate me for talking about this, and they're so angry saying, who cares, who cares? I'm not telling you Bernie deserves to lose. I'm not saying that Bernie, should or shouldn't, none of that. I'm telling you that this scandal is bad. I don't know if the press will weaponize it because it seems they're more obsessed with Warren and calling Bernie sexist. Fine. But I think Trump absolutely will weaponize this if Bernie wins in the general. You can't ignore this. It will be bad for Bernie. And that's why I think, admittedly, a lot of the big Bernie people who normally yell at me haven't said a whole lot. Because I think they recognize that I'm right. Okay? Again, I get it. It's one guy in Iowa. He says there's other people. Some people praise him. It looks pretty bad. But is it Bernie himself saying these things? No. But it is on record, and it will be used against him. And more importantly, before I move on, these people are locking their social media accounts. Where's the press? This is ridiculous. The Iowa caucus is in a couple weeks. This is huge news. Nowhere to be seen. But maybe it'll come up. Maybe it won't. Maybe Bernie will manage to get past this one unscathed because nobody in the media wants to legitimize Veritas. They're scared because Veritas has targeted them too. Let's do this. Let's move on now to the dual scandal affecting both Warren and Bernie. Hashtag never Warren trends after Democratic debate. I appreciate this one, I really do. You see, Elizabeth Warren and CNN absolutely framed everything against Bernie. I talked about this in my 10 a.m. segment over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. But when they would ask Bernie a question about Medicare for all, they would say, how do you avoid bankrupting the country? You owe Americans an explanation. They don't mention anything about Elizabeth Warren. They framed hers in a positive way. Oh, Elizabeth Warren talks about her great ideas. When it came to the sexism scandal in question, which is probably fake and very few actually believe, that Bernie would have told Elizabeth Warren a woman can't win, CNN actually asks Bernie Sanders, so you're saying you've never said this? And Bernie's like, that's correct. And the woman goes, okay, Warren, how did you feel when Bernie told you a woman couldn't win? And people laugh in the crowd because it was so insane. Even MSNBC's Michael Brzezinski said, wait. He just told you he denied it. And then you turn and ask the question, ignoring what he just said? So this really made Bernie's fans angry. It made me angry. I'm pretty sure it made a lot of Trump supporters angry too. CNN's brazen bias against Bernie Sanders. I would be willing to place a hard bet that many Trump supporters, conservatives, would rather win a fair fight against Bernie's ideas than see the media rig the system. More importantly, I think there's kind of a there's kind of an anger by proxy here. So many Trump supporters have seen CNN smear the president that when they see it happening again overtly to Bernie Sanders, they get angry about it too. Shocked. And there's a meme now, this was Jack Posobiec, Trump supporter, showing the black and white hands grasping, saying Bernie supporters, Trump supporters, CNN is trash. Right now, there's another major trend on Twitter. CNN is garbage. Well, surprise, surprise. Let's read a little bit of the context from The Hill, and then I want to get to the next bit. So it wasn't just this bias from the media, but Warren refusing to shake Bernie's hand. And now we've got this. I want to show you this before we can dive in. All of the snake emojis are being sent to Warren, and here's the big update. I know I talked about this earlier. People are saying the snake is the biblical symbol of the evil of women, therefore it proves his fans are sexist. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. It's that absurd. Let's read a little bit. A spat between Sanders and Warren over whether Sanders said he believed a woman could not be elected president spilled onto Twitter after Tuesday's Democratic primary debate in Iowa, causing the hashtag #NeverWarren to trend in the top 3 on Twitter in the United States. The trending topic comes after Sanders and Warren publicly disagreed over whether Sanders had made the remark. We know all this. So I think that's, for the most part, I'm not going to read through everything everyone's saying. That's the gist of the story. But I will tell you, out of the thousands of tweets I've seen, there have been many people saying they're not going to vote for Warren if she gets the nomination. And a lot of people are saying vote blue no matter who. There's some people saying if you're willing to not vote at all because Warren got the nomination, then you're basically voting for Trump. And this has caused an even bigger rift where Bernie Sanders supporters, who, remember, Bernie or bust was big. 12 to 18%, depending on the data you're looking at, of Bernie supporters actually voted for Trump. Many of them didn't vote. They're angry now saying, no, I will not vote blue no matter who. Elizabeth Warren is a snake, and I will not vote for her if she gets the nomination. I'll tell you this. Many Yang supporters have said Yang or bust, Bernie or bust. Biden supporters will probably vote for whoever, because that's kind of like vanilla ice cream when it comes to the Democratic debates, or the Democratic option. And Pete Buttigieg, too. But when it comes to Warren, when it comes to mostly Bernie, Yang, and Tulsi, their supporters are diehards. I mean, look, I really like Andrew Yang. I think he's a great dude. I'm not going to vote unless it's Yang. And they already kept him out of this debate, so let's take a look at this story from BuzzFeed. Bernie Sanders' very online fans are filling Elizabeth Warren's Twitter mention with snakes. Long brewing frustration with Warren among Sanders' online stands has blown up this week. They say, the barrage of emojis, which are often used by stands of pop stars in the comments section, have boiled over as supporters of both Warren and Sanders have escalated a proxy battle online, as the candidates have disagreed over the characterization of a private meeting. We know about it. I'm not going to read it. The fight between Warren and Sanders supporters has always seemed inevitable. On various platforms, leftists and Sanders supporters have criticized Warren for being a capitalist and for her health care plan, which they see as her campaign backing away from a commitment to Medicare for all. Democratic Socialists of America, which launched its own independent campaign for Sanders, told BuzzFeed News in September that it wasn't ruling out the idea of distributing materials to canvassers, pointing out the differences between the two candidates. I think for the most part, that's a story. In the lead up to the debate, Sanders supporters trended a refund Warren hashtag, demanding refunds from the candidate through Act Blue, the Democratic-aligned fundraising platform, and posted screenshots of emails claiming Act Blue was experiencing high volumes of refund requests from Sanders supporters who donated to Warren. It's not just Sanders supporters. These are people who supported both Sanders and Warren, now retracting their support for Warren because, look, you're going to ask me, she's lying. Warren lies all the time. Sorry, it's a fact. She lied about being a Native American, about her pregnancy, about her kids, about her job, about her school. I don't want to hear it. She's a liar. Bernie, on the other hand, between the two, she wouldn't admit in the one debate she'd raise your taxes. Bernie said, no, we're going to raise your taxes. I say, hey, that's an unpopular position. Bernie was willing to say, I'm sorry. I do not believe Warren on this one. But let's get to the main point. This feud is causing major damage to both campaigns. You know, you've got people getting refunds from Warren. She is burning herself to the ground. But here's the thing. Her polls were already tanking. She's become desperate. What we're seeing here is Democratic crabs in a barrel. You ever hear the saying? Basically, you put a bunch of crabs in a barrel or a bucket or whatever, and when one starts to climb out, the others grab it and pull it back in. Elizabeth Warren is sinking, and as she goes down, she latches onto Bernie with the most extreme, absurd story that, for the most part, no one cares about. Let's be honest. Does anyone really care if Bernie said this? I mean, for the most part, most people probably wouldn't believe it. Many of the establishment cronies who love, Hillary Clinton 2.0, aka Warren, will pretend to believe that Bernie would say this, and they call the Bernie bros all sorts of names, but it's just completely absurd. In the end, though, we see this. From Politico, I sort of can't believe this is happening. Young progressives mourn Bernie Warren feud. Young Democrats in Iowa fear that an unwelcome fight over sexism might end up harming both candidates. Well, you would be right. This is bad news for both. It's going to cause damage for both. Bernie's supporters are going to say no to Warren. Warren's supporters are going to say no to Bernie. They're going to drop in the polls, and it's going to prop up Buttigieg and Biden. Now, we will get to the grand Pelosi conspiracy in a little bit. I want to read a little bit of this before we get into the grand Pelosi conspiracy, which I've talked about before, but I think it's silly, and I'll tell you why, but I'll show you. They say this: the past 2 days have been building to the must-see moment now, airing live on CNN. Bernie Sanders was denying the allegation. Elizabeth Warren maintaining that he had said it, was disputing the perceived electability of Sanders and other male candidates. The only people on the stage who have won every single election that they've been in are the women, she said. As the tense exchange unfolded inside an auditorium on the campus of Drake University, the implications were manifest to the dozens of young people gathered in a college bar nearby. With 20 days remaining until Iowa's first in the nation nominating caucuses, two of the leading candidates were now engaged in a zero-sum, identity-based conflict that could reshape the Democratic race. And for many of the young voters watching Tuesday night, it wasn't just any two candidates entering the Thunderdome. It was the two candidates they admired the most. The two candidates they had struggled to choose between. The two candidates they believed would never attack each other until now. Quote, I sort of can't believe this is happening, says Nicole Margine, shaking her head between sips of a local porter. Maybe this is naive, but I was hoping they would ignore this infighting and focus on policy. Now I'm really worried. We should be building a coalition to make sure one of them gets the nomination. And instead, this is going to divide us on the left. It already did. It absolutely did. Kyle Kulinski. Oh, he's the progressive. Is he the? I don't know his channel. Kyle Kulinski is a progressive commentator on YouTube. He said that he thought Bernie would choose Warren as VP if he got the nomination, but not so much anymore. Check this out. National Review says the great progressive duel ends with both candidates throwing away their shot. They are crashing head on, but I got to tell you, I blame Elizabeth Warren for this one. What's really happening, in my opinion, is not that they're colliding. It's that Warren is grabbing the leg of Bernie as she sinks to the bottom. She is a liar. She is duplicitous. She has no idea what she's talking about half the time. And as she sinks in the polls, she grasps at the pant leg of Bernie Sanders, screeching, trying to yank him down to climb back up. It's not going to work. It's going to bring them both down. They basically say the exact same thing, but I'll read the first paragraph because this is a conservative outlet. They say, we had 48 hours of buildup to the great progressive presidential candidate duel, and then both contenders threw away their shots. About 30 minutes into tonight's debate, we finally got the long-awaited Bernie Sanders-Elizabeth Warren showdown, but clearly, both candidates lost their nerve. Okay, so that's actually wrong. I misunderstood what this article is about. They actually, no way. It ended with Elizabeth Warren not shaking Bernie Sanders' hand. And I'm surprised National Review would frame it this way. Maybe they just didn't finish watching the debate. But I'll skip over this one for now and bring you all to the great Nancy Pelosi conspiracy, which has now expanded. Let me tell you, Donald Trump Jr. tweets, after watching CNN railroad Bernie last night, doesn't it become obvious that Nancy delayed her sham impeachment transfer to the Senate to make sure that Bernie isn't able to be on the campaign trail? The fix is in again. Well, first, the fix is in for sure. The only problem with this theory is that it would pull Amy Klobuchar and Warren both off the campaign trail. Here's where the great Pelosi conspiracy actually expands. They do want Warren off the campaign trail because Warren is in on it. That's right. I don't think this is true. I think it's silly. But the general idea now is that Warren is trying to destroy Bernie on purpose. Yes, they want Biden to win. Warren is the establishment candidate. Klobuchar is also an establishment Democrat. They know that they need to get Bernie off the campaign trail. Impeachment is all a part of this plan. Warren's lies about Bernie is all a part of this plan. It is a grand Pelosi Democrat conspiracy. I'm sorry, it's just not true. The Democrats are just incompetent, okay? I know a lot of people want to believe it. Donald Trump Jr. saying, doesn't it seem that way? It kind of does. I want to believe it, but I can't. I'm sorry. Listen, not only will this hurt Klobuchar and Warren and Sanders, listen to this. Ted Cruz floats witness reciprocity to get Biden and whistleblower to testify. Sure, maybe they want to pull Bernie off the campaign trail, but you've got to take into consideration everything that will occur. If the Senate, if Ted Cruz says he wants Biden, then Biden's off the campaign trail too. Now, it could be that Biden will come in for one day of witness testimony and the rest of the senators will be there for the duration of the trial, giving Biden the advantage. But the only real possible conspiracy is the Buttigieg conspiracy, which I'm sorry is just not true. Could you imagine if the real grand conspiracy was to get Biden, Klobuchar, Warren, and Bernie off the campaign trail so that Pete Buttigieg is free to campaign all throughout Iowa and win the primary in the first state? I'm sorry. I just don't think so. I think Pete Buttigieg has been able to maintain his position. Props to him. He's got a commanding voice. He's calm and rational. He's great at debate. And that's why he's been able to hold his position. But let's be real. Buttigieg is vanilla yogurt. I'm not saying that to be mean. He's vanilla yogurt. There's nothing special about the guy. I respect him for his service. I think that puts him above many of these contenders for the Democratic Party. But what does he have? He's a small town mayor. He hasn't served a long time. He's not really done much. I will say, though, I got to be honest. His military service makes me feel like he's probably more qualified than the rest of them. I thought it was funny when during the debate, they asked the Democrats, why do you think you should be commander-in-chief? Pointing out Pete Buttigieg actually served. And no one had a real good answer. And I thought about it and I'm like, the real answer the Democrats should have given is, I would defer to the advice of Pete Buttigieg, 100%. I think the best point they could have made was that, Buttigieg has real military experience. He served in a real tour. So he actually knows more about this than most of us. And I would rely on his experience should I become commander-in-chief. Also pointing out that Buttigieg would lack the political experience to make moves in Washington, D.C., and it's fair to say. But I don't know what they have against Buttigieg. Look, I don't want to derail. I'm going to wrap this one up. I do not believe there's a grand conspiracy here. What I really think is that when it comes to Warren and Sanders, it's crabs in a barrel. We knew the bout was going to happen at some point. The caucus is soon, and they need to start taking swipes, and they are. It's going to cause them to burn down. As for impeachment, Pelosi is just incompetent, man. That's it. Come on. Impeachment has helped Trump across the board. Either she's a sleeper agent to help Trump, or she's incompetent. And that's what I think is likely the case. But let me wrap it up with the main idea. Listen. Project Veritas. They released this information about this staffer. More to come, I suppose. And I would be willing to bet O'Keefe is slow rolling this like he usually does. He wants everyone to say, oh, it's just one guy. Oh, it's just one guy. But I tell you this now. All of the staffers, not all of them, but many of them, I think all of them, are locking their social media accounts. This should be major news. Not even that. Look, so it's Iowa's field directors. A regional field director even. This is bad. Here's what I think. When you see this video from O'Keefe, you see this one guy talking, I have to imagine they didn't only hang out with one guy, right? They had to hang out with a couple different people. Maybe they were at a bar. If this is how a guy talks to people he doesn't really know, how does he talk to his friends? I'd be willing to bet O'Keefe has more, and that's why everyone's locking their accounts down. But you know what? I don't know whether or not the media will pounce on this, because again, they don't want to, legitimize James O'Keefe. But the fact that all of these staffers for Bernie are locking their accounts down should be major news. And for some reason, all they're talking about is Warren and snakes. But you know me, I'll talk about it all to the best of my abilities. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I think this spells, it's potentially the end for Warren and Sanders. I mean, Warren's been tanking. Sanders embroiled now in 2 scandals. It's bad for him. It is. Whether anyone wants to admit it or not, I don't care if you're a fan of Bernie or not. This is bad news for Bernie. Warren's already, collapsing. We'll see what happens, though. Iowa's soon. Bernie's in the lead. This might not hurt him. This actually might help him. I got to be honest. These far-left activist types who are going to vote in the primary, they might want to hear this. But in the general, Bernie's going to drop like a rock. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m., YouTube.com/TimCastNews, and I will see you all there.